Hi, I'm Brian Smith. I'm a front-end engineer at Axim Collaborative, and today's workshop is about Frontend Plugin Framework and how to make and use front-end plugin slots. Well, welcome to the Frontend Plugin Workshop. I am Brian Smith, and this is Adolfo Brandes. We are from Axim, and we're excited to work with you to see what you can do with front-end plugins. So has everybody managed to get to this GitHub README yet? Just everybody's looking good? Cool. All right. So I think the way that we're going to start this off is by going through the operators track. The operators track is going to focus on what it looks like to use and make plugins, whereas the developers track is focused on making new slots for plugins to go in. So we'll start with the operators track here. And actually, I will do this on the larger screen. And so if we look here, we can see what our objectives are. We want to understand the core concepts of Frontend Plugin Framework. That is, what is a plugin slot? What is a plugin? We want to learn a bit about how to configure the plugins. So what are the different ways in which you can use plugins and slots? And then we're going to connect to a development environment. That's the IP addresses on the little slips of paper that you've been passed out. See a plugin in action, and then learn what it's like to make your own.
Just a side note, this is a workshop, it's not a talk, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is you work more than we talk, and you ask questions too of each other, of us. Yep, okay, sorry. So in summary, ask questions.
Yeah, so all of this information is here. If you want to learn more about Frontend Plugin Framework, we've got links in here. But the next thing that we're going to look at is this development environment part. And so the part I'm going to walk everybody through is the connecting to one of these pre-built VMs. If you already have Tutor running locally and your own dev environment set up, feel free to head off in that direction, but I'm going to walk people through the connecting to pre-built VMs part. We can move on to this next part, which is starting the dev environment. So I've already done this locally, but if you are in your VM, doesn't matter where in your VM you are, but you can just do tutor dev start lms mfe-d. And what that's going to do is start up the LMS container, which is for all the learning stuff, the MFE container, which is all the pre-built micro frontends that are running just as static hosted bundles. And then the -d means detach. So that way you can still interact with your terminal after doing this. So that is from where you have connected. You should see workshop at whatever the IP is. And then you can just do tutor dev start lms mfe-d. And then after you've done that, you can go to local.openedx.io:8000, and it should get you to here.
So in the VM, again.
Yes.
In the VM, you run tutor dev start, okay, in the VM. And that will take maybe a couple of minutes. It's a slow VM, sorry.
Yep.
To fire up the processes. And then you go to your browser, and if you enter local.openedx.io:8000, you should get the main OpenEdX page.
Yep. All right, so show of hands, who's managed to get local OpenEdX.io:8000 working? Cool, good deal.
Okay.
All right, then let's keep going with this. So once you're here, if you go to sign in, you should get to the auth-n MFE. And then it should just be OpenEdX open edX, and then you should hit sign in. And this next part will be interesting. You should get it trying to go to Learner Dashboard, and you should see that it cannot load the Learner Dashboard.
If you're using the VM.
Yes, if you're using the VM, it should not be able to load the Learner Dashboard.
What? You're having trouble connecting?
No, I'm not having trouble. So
Okay. Failed successfully.
Yes. All right, so I will then, let's get back here and just get this tab in. So the reason that the Learner Dashboard is not working is because we have it mounted on these VMs. So that means that it's not going to run the precompiled bundle, but it's instead going to expect it to be running separately, either in a tutor dev container for the MFE, or, as we're going to do, having it running completely outside of tutor. So since we only did tutor dev start LMS MFE and not MFE Learner Dashboard, that means that we are only getting the pre-bundled ones, not the mounted ones. So now what we can do is actually start up the Learner Dashboard MFE in development mode. And so if we go in here, you want to be in your source directory. So if you're first on the VM, you should see build kit, toml, and source. Then you can go into source, and then you can go into front-end app learner dashboard. And then once you're in here, you're going to want to do nvm use. And so nvm is node version manager. What that does is says, hey, what version of node does this MFE want us to use? And since we have a nvmrc file in here, it's going to notice, hey, we found an nvrc file. It says we're trying to use node 20. And then it says we're now using node 20. Cool. The next part is to run npm CI. This is a clean install of all of the dependencies.
This is the part that Regis complains a lot that takes too long.
Yes.
So once again, what we're doing here is running the Learner Dashboard app, the front-end app, outside the tutor environment, right? We have tutor running in Docker containers. The other MFEs are all there, except Learner Dashboard. Learner Dashboard's offline. Now we're bringing it up at the same port that tutor expects, just outside the environment. Okay, so it's using the same port. So we're pretending to be inside tutor, but we're not.
Yes.
Why are we doing this? Brian?
We're doing this so that way we can easily see the changes that we make to the plugin that we have in the plugin slot without needing to rebuild an entire image. So being able to do this lets us live update code and see everything change and notice what our plugin looks like when we're using it in the slot. So this is a very good way to, while you're iterating on what you want in a plugin slot, just kind of keep going, see it running in dev mode, and then once you're happy with it, figure out what it looks like to package that and use in production. Okay, so npm CI is completed. Then we do npm run dev. And dev is the script within our package.json that has all that fancy stuff that says, we want to go to this URL so tutor knows what we're doing at this port, all that kind of stuff.
This is command that says, pretend I'm in tutor.
Yeah, more or less.
You can see the server running at port 1996 there.
And you can see the host is apps local openedx.io, which is what Tutor would want it to be.
Again, you can do this all locally if you want. There's nothing magical in that VM, right? This is, well, as long as you can run Node on your machine. And Tutor, of course. So there are a few requirements there.
All right. So it says that is success. And now we've got a learner dash, and we've got a plugin in a slot. So once you've gotten there, you're in a good spot. So has anybody been following along fast enough to get here? Wow, cool.
Okay, nice.
Awesome.
Okay.
That is great.
Some pros in the audience today.
That is really great.
Like literally, right?
So the next thing is looking at where this is actually coming from, because this is a plugin in a slot right now. So what I have done is I'm using the remote SSH plugin for VS Code. And so this is connected to that VM that I'm running on. And so if I go in here, I can change this to have underscores on each side if I want to. And then I save this file. And it should have picked that up. It did. It reloads, and then we can see that change. So that's the next thing that I want everybody to do, is get to your endconfig JSX file. You can either do that by stopping your dev server, and then, I don't know why it keeps showing me that, but if you're in here and you want to, what is it?
I've been having Wi-Fi issues.
No, I don't know why it keeps doing connection refused errors. But yeah, if you stop your dev server, and then you can just open up an editor here and see all of that. We've got Nano on there. I assume we have a couple of other editors installed on the VMs. So you could make changes there. Or if you want to keep your dev server running, like I do, then you can follow the instructions that we had in the connect to one of the pre-built VMs, where we link to the remote SSH extension. And that's just a way to connect VS Code to a remote server and then edit the files directly there. So I know that this is kind of a choose your own adventure part, but for this, it's really get to a place where you can edit the endconfig JSX file that is on that VM, and then see that something changes in the plugin that is installed on the learner dashboard. Did it pick it up? There we go. So one of the next things that we have is a couple more examples for plugins. So we go in here. We can see that we've got our basic hello world, but we go into our configs here. Here's our basic. Here's a branded footer, and here's a sidebar plugin example. So let's go ahead and grab all of this and see what a different plugin looks like. And so let me actually zoom this out to a reasonable point. Yeah, here's another example plugin. And for that, you can just go in, replace everything in your unconfig JSX. Then it should reload. And sidebar recommender. Well, now I'm a little bit confused. It did? Because this is not what we're seeing in here, right? Yeah, this is different.
Also, I have the same problem. So then I've learned that for them config.
Yep.
Do we have a typo somewhere?
Might. Let me go back to our basic example. Let's try using this ID. We do have the alias, but let's try using this one.
If you had the same problem, bonus
Yeah.
points if you find what the problem is.
There, it worked. Yeah, so for some reason the alias wasn't working.
This is a master version from yesterday morning, so maybe there's a bug with the aliases.
As of
Yeah, I
yesterday
don't know.
morning? Okay. Well, anyways, using this ID instead did work. So for anybody that is trying to use this sidebar plugin example, the issue that I noticed was that we are using this ID, which is not following the new naming convention for slot IDs, but should still work because it used to be what the slot ID was. And instead, I replaced that with this new ID that is following the naming convention. And then it worked as expected. I do plan on looking into why the alias wasn't working as it should, but for anybody that is stuck.
The plugin from the name, it will work. It's widget sidebar slot.
Oh, so we just had the wrong name for the old alias. All right,
Okay.
cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You get a star.
Yeah. So it's just widget sidebar slot, and we just had a typo there. Perfect.
So a bit of context here. When we launched plugin slots for Sumac, we came up with a off-the-cuff convention, and then realized that we needed less risk of collisions, right? So now the names are longer in reverse DNS notation, right? So it's always going to be org, OpenEdX, frontend, et cetera, for the slot names. However, because we didn't want to break everybody's plugins on the first release, the old names still work.
As long as you use the correct old name.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, so those are just some of the examples that we have. But after that, really, once you're at a point where you can start playing around with your unconfig JSX files, it's time to start playing around with them and seeing what you want to do with plugins and slots. So if you are on this document, you can see that we have all of the available plugin slots documented here. And so this is a lot. We have all of these listed for all of these different MFEs. And if you go into any of these, you can see what they actually look like, because these are documented with some screenshots so you can understand, as well as example mconfig JSX code that you can just paste right into your mconfig JSX and then see how that works. So that is a convention that we have around all these slots. The idea is grab the example code from the README, paste it into an mconfig JSX, see that it works and that you can start playing with it, and then modify it to do what you're trying to get done.
Once again, this is in the repository where the slot is defined in the MFE, right?
And they are all linked from the docs.openedx.org page for front-end plugin slots. So available front-end plugin slots right here. All of these link to the documentation within the repos. And that, in the context of this workshop, is linked here. And so what I did put down here for next steps is getting a plugin ready for production use. That is something that involves rebuilding MFE images, and it isn't necessarily the fastest process. And so if we had to iterate on that a couple of times, we'd end up spending all of our workshop time just waiting to see a plugin work in production mode. So that is outside of the scope of this workshop, but it is something that everyone within the front-end development community is more than happy to help with. So if you reach out on the forums or on Slack and just say, hey, I've got this cool plugin, I want to get it packaged and ready to go in my tutor local environment to deploy it in production, people will be more than happy to help. And also, I'll be around all conference, so if you have any questions, you can just find me and ask me as well.
Same here.
I have one question about the way we would architecture something like this. What's your idea of how to do this? Like a npm package that we can then install? It's preferable than having all of this spaghetti code in the same file, right?
Very much so. This is good enough if you're changing a small thing, adding a small link here and there. If you're serious, yes, you'll want packages that you npm install and then import into the JSX file.
Yeah, so if you look at what we're doing in this one specifically, here's just a React component that's sidebar recommender. And instead of having this defined directly in this mconfig JSX file, you could get this from an npm package that you publish somewhere. And so that's a really good way to go about it, is if you have like a set of components that you want to use in plugins in different places, then you can publish that as an npm package and then pull those components in the mconfig JSX files and then use those within your plugin slots. So the render widget could be something that you imported from an npm package that is designed for that purpose.
And the second question is, what version can we use this? Where is it?
The first release that had some slots was Sumac. Teak has more slots with the new names.
Yep.
And the idea is to keep adding slots, but not removing them. So, but if we change a slot or intend to remove it, the idea is we give a deprecation period. We tell people this slot's going away in favor of some other slot, or for some other reason.
So we can basically, from those of us that have 4 of headers and footers.
Sorry. Speak into the box.
Okay, this is weird. Okay. So from those of us who have headers and footers that were forked from the original, we can now use something like this to customize them?
Yes,
that's the
absolutely.
idea, right?
And we actually have an example of that right here. So if we go to our configs, we have our branded footer example. And so I'll just grab all of this code and paste that in our config JSX. And it looks like this also has the sidebar recommender in it, but that's okay. Oh, Oh, we need to actually copy the footer in. Looks like that's over here. So let me just, I should have this somewhere. We should have this actually right over. Oh, I don't have this cloned. Okay. Give me 1 second. I will get this all here. Okay. And then,
This error you're seeing is the browser trying to connect to a port that's not.
yeah. It's happening over and over and over. Oh, wait, no, wrong thing. I should not have done that. I autopiloted. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. Now back here, I can grab operators footer, copy. And we want this in learner dashboard, and I think we just want this right in here because this is trying to import source my brand. Oh, okay. So I need to rename this to my brand. Cool. And then we should have this working. Oh, it's figuring everything out. Oh,
I guess it's missing footer.
Yeah, check the export.
After my name. Yeah. Footer? No.
Mhm.
CSX is still in footer. Should import automatically. No, footer and default. Okay.
oh, yeah, it's missing the SRC. Yeah, I just put it right there. There, cool.
Hey,
Now we've got a custom footer.
Times the chart.
nice
Okay.
brand.
But yeah, if you can see, the custom footer is just using still the old ID, just footer slot. We do have a new ID for that as well. And then if we go look at all of the available slots, so let's go back to that.
So you can either use. I have to speak to the weird box, right? So you can either use the alias or the like the complete name, like you have there, the org open edX frontend v1.
Yeah,
Can
we
you do
recommend
those?
against using the old names because they aren't set up in a way to make sense and be versioned and
Yeah.
have anything beyond that. So if we have a new version of a slot, it won't work with the old alias and you will need to update. So following the new naming convention where you can makes the most sense. These examples are just not the newest, so they're still using some of the old names. But yeah, here are all of the slots available in the footer. We've got the full footer right there, as well as the studio footer, and then just the logo for the studio footer.
Nice.
So that's providing people with a way to modify just a piece of the footer instead of the whole thing. We have a lot of that in the header. We've got the logo. We've got the logged out items, the main menu. So the idea of in the header, if you want to customize pieces of it, we have a lot of slots for that instead of just fully replacing the whole header. And if the footer is something where people want to have more pieces that can be customized, that's definitely something we're open to. But right now, the default footer is just that little example logo in the corner and nothing else. So there's not too much to customize there. But yeah, from a, oh yeah,
Wait for the weird box.
yeah.
Okay, so we have multiple repositories with slots, right? So do we define slots in a single place? Can we define slots in a
Yeah, that's the main documentation page you saw there, docs.openedx.org.
Yeah, so this is where all of these slots are.
No, while customizing.
Oh, so
So
what do
can
you
you
want to do
import
with your
them? Yeah.
mconfig JSX?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so what I would recommend when working and doing development and just like seeing what plugins will look like in slots, just make an mconfig JSX like we're doing now with a local checkout of the MFE that you want to customize and just get it to a point where you're happy with it. Then you can take that same mconfig JSX, and since we have that naming convention, you can move that over to a different MFE, and it will only customize the things that are applicable to that MFE instead of everything that isn't. And so then you can just have one giant mconfig JSX that works for everything, and then you can take that and adjust it into a tutor plugin that is able to make all of the changes that you want.
Okay.
The tutor mconfig JSX follows a specific format, so it can support multiple tutor plugins modifying the same file. See what can you see the problem here that tutor's trying to solve? It's the same mconfig JSX, but for multiple MFEs. So it has some conditionals there for each MFE, and the syntax of the actual slot configuration is the same, but the way you declare it is a little bit different. So there's a section in the tutor MFE README that explains this very thing. If it's a bad description, you can blame me, because I wrote that. So
did we land the new example, or
yeah.
is that still an open PR?
Yeah, we have an improvement already in the works. So again, what's happening here is the mconfig JSX that you're editing is in the root of the MFE where you're running npm run dev, right? So it can just access it there. In production, things are different, right? You build the MFE, and then it's served from the MFE container in Tutor, right? So you need a way to get that in there, and that's up to Tutor, right? But it needs to do that the same thing for each MFE.
Yeah.
So it copies an mconfig JSX to the MFE, builds it, takes the artifact, puts it in the image, X, Y, and Z for all MFEs, right?
Yep. All right.
Oh yeah, and an important detail. mconfig JSX needs to be there at build time, right?
Yes.
This is an important detail. There is no runtime configuration of plugins at the moment. There might be in the future, there might not. Okay, the important fact is no runtime configuration of plugins, only build time.
So yeah, if you're looking at the using plugins, customizing with that, we've reached the end of the tutorial for the operator stuff. I'm excited to see what slots you end up wanting to try using. Feel free to pull down MFEs, try running them. I will help anybody with any issues that they have. If you're trying to play with a slot in an MFE that we don't have cloned on these VMs, go for it. There are definitely ways to do that, and we're actually going to talk about what it looks like to switch which MFE you have in dev mode as we move into the developer section right now. So that'll be helpful even if you're doing operator stuff just from a I want to mount a different MFE in dev mode perspective. So we're moving on to the developer side of things. The idea here, or actually, do we want to do a quick water break for everybody?
Yeah, we should.
We've hit an hour. Let's give everybody a bit of time to go get some water. Well, let's move on to some of this developer stuff. So the idea behind the developers track is we're going to actually look into what it looks like to create a plugin slot and have default content in that slot. If you notice that there are a lot of slots that have something in there by default, and then you have the option to replace it or add stuff to it. So we're going to look at what having default content in a slot is like. And then try putting a plugin into that slot see it actually work and get replaced. And then we're going to talk about what it might look like to actually package a plugin that would then utilize a slot that you may have added. So in here, we're in the developers README. This is mostly referring to stuff that is described in this PR. I'll click into that later. I think everybody already has a development environment set up in some way, shape, or form. And so we're going to look at creating a slot. Now, I do have a note here that the pre-built VMs already have learner dash mounted. So this is the part I was talking about of it's time to switch what we have mounted. So I have shut down the learner dashboard dev server, and I'm actually going to close these tabs because those are creating errors. And now if I go to tutor mounts list, we can see that I've got learner dashboard mounted. And so what I'm actually going to do is tutor mounts remove learner dashboard. And so this is if I'm in the source directory, I can just do tutor mounts remove path to mounted MFE, which here is /frontend app learner dashboard. And then if I go back up to tutor mounts list, we'll see that it's only edX platform mounted. And that's just from if people want to go into edX platform and actually mess with that, having that running from the latest pulled source is easier than having it running from within a container. So now what we want to do is actually mount the learning MFE. So I can go to tutor mounts add front-end app learning. Oh, it looks like I accidentally said learner dashboard in the stuff there, but we're adding learning here. And then we can do same thing with tutor dev start. And now I should see that if I go to here, we should be able to get to our learner dashboard because it's not mounted. Yep. Oh, I guess I need to get into a course. Yep. Let's do that. Okay. And now I can go to begin course, and we should see that the learning MFE cannot be reached because that has been mounted.
Okay, running back what we just did. We unmounted the learner dashboard MFE. So what you saw there as a dashboard was the one inside Tutor in the Docker containers.
Yep, that was the static bundle as opposed to a Webpack dev server.
Yeah. And now we mounted learning MFE. So when we got into the course, well, we're seeing the error because the MFE is, the artifacts, the bundle is nowhere to be found.
Yep, it's expecting it to be running in dev mode. We do not have it running in dev mode yet. So that is what we're going to do next. And here, cd frontend app learning, and then we can do the same thing. nvm use to tell node version manager to look at the nvm-rc and use that. npm ci to make sure that we clean install all of our dependencies.
This section may feel like it's going a bit faster, because it is.
Yep.
Also, it's more focused for developers, so we expect a little bit more knowledge. Right? It's fine. Like if you want to keep moving along with us, it's okay. It's fine to ask questions. Don't worry. But it's meant to move a little faster. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry?
Yeah, except for waiting for npm CI. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's where you can catch up. See?
Yeah. We've got built-in delays. This is why we didn't have node modules as part of the image. Okay, and then npm run dev.
I love the no local modules found. This is fine.
Yeah.
This is fine fire all around.
So this is fine part is very nice. But
That
yeah,
is, do you know what that's about? What the message is referencing? When you're in development mode and you're using a library, we have some OpenEdX scoped libraries, right? Frontend lib, special exams is one example.
or
right?
Paragon.
Or Paragon
or-
itself.
Yeah.
If you're developing Paragon against
Or
NMFE
platform,
or platform,
or build. Yeah.
and you need a way to make modifications to that code in the Git repository where they're at, as opposed to in node modules, right? You can use a modules.config.js file that specifies aliases from modules to a file in the file system. So you point it somewhere else, right? Because npm link never works.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Right. You mean modules config.js?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. All right, we have a user.
It was a bit painful.
It is, yeah, figuring it out
Yeah.
exactly how to specify.
The pathing was not.
Oh, Mike. You're supposed to.
Yeah. And because we have a specific setup, the way we do our configurations in our tutor, it was a bit on the painful side. But yeah, after we got the gist of it, it started working correctly. But yeah, it is not the easiest or the quickest way to set up everything. But after everything's done, it works well enough.
All right, cool.
All right. So now that we have learning running in dev mode, we can look into creating a slot. So this is telling us to create a new slot using another one as a basis. Basically just copy unit title slot and make it unit content slot. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go into front-end app learning here, and we can find our plugin slots. And we have unit title slot. And so we are going to just copy this and then paste it. And now we've got a copy, and then we can rename and make this unit content slot.
And this is in the checkout of front-end app learning in source plugin slots. We just copied one slot
Yep.
directory into another.
So yeah, we've got the command line way to do it, or if you're doing everything right within VS Code because you already have the dev server running on your one screen there, then that's another way to do it. And so yeah, we in here now have this entire directory. We've got our index.jsx, and this is where our slot actually lives. But now let's look at what we want to do for this content slot. And so the first thing I'm going to look at is this. Here's our index.jsx that we want for our unit content slot. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab all of this and replace what we have in our index.jsx here. There we go. And now in unit content slot, we actually have a unit content slot instead of another unit title slot. Then it looks like the other thing that it is modifying is unit. So let's look at our index.jsx in sequence unit. So this is going to be in courseware, course, sequence, unit. And then we want our index.jsx here. And so it looks like right after unit title slot, we also want to import our unit content slot. So here's our unit title slot import. We now want to also get our unit content slot import.
Okay, so explaining what's happening here. We define the slot component somewhere in the tree, in source plugin slots. But it doesn't do anything there. You actually need to put the component in a page that exists so you can modify it later.
Yeah, so let's look at what this is actually doing when we look at our unit content slot. So here, what we're doing is defining a plugin slot component, which comes straight from Frontend Plugin Framework. And you can just make a plugin slot anywhere. You can use this component directly in pages or whatever. It'll still work. You just need to define it. However, for documentation purposes, we like making new components within the MFE that are basically just wrapping a plugin slot with an ID and some props and then what it does inside. So here, what we're saying is unit content slot. We want to take in a course ID, a unit ID, and children. We want to take that course ID and unit ID and put those as our plugin props. So any plugin that is going into this slot then has the ability to see what the course ID and unit ID are. And then it just wraps the children. So whatever we're putting this around, that's just going to render in there by default.
We're assuming some React knowledge here. Children of a React component are just the other HTML DOM nodes, well, not the DOM nodes themselves, but the stuff that's inside that component. That
Yeah, so if you look at this diff here, what it's showing is that instead of just having content iframe directly here in this unit div after unit suspense, we now have a unit content slot wrapping content iframe. So this content iframe is then the children of the unit content slot. So I'm going to go ahead and grab all of this, and we can do that same thing.
Children of a slot is something we call default contents in this terminology here. This is not an industry terminology, it's an OpenEdX slots terminology. We call whatever children are defined like that. Content iframe, for example, that child is default content of the unit content slot.
And specifically, it's not just children, because if I put a div in here and just had it say hi and then also rendered the children, this div would also be part of the default contents.
Yes. Yeah.
So they are not exactly the same thing, although both this div and the children that are passed into it via the component we've created are children of this plugin slot. It is not just any children that are called children coming in here.
Yeah. And there's specific syntax when you use a plugin to do something about the default content. You can keep it, you can not keep it, you can specifically replace it. Right?
Yep. So now we have our unit content slot wrapping our content iframe. Our unit content slot is just going ahead and wrapping that with a plugin slot. And all that should happen now is it should not break. We should be able to actually get in here and see that we have a unit still. So let's start it. Yes, and everything seems to be working as expected. And we don't have any errors here, so that means that all of our names are good. We haven't broken anything by adding this, but it's not doing anything because we just added the slot. We didn't actually put anything in there. So now we're going to look at that next part, which is using the slot. If we can get back. And so now we're going to create a plugin to display the unit ID before the content and the course ID after the content. So we've got an example here, and this is using the unit content slot. So if I just grab everything in here, and then I want to go into our env-config.jsx file that does not exist in the root here yet. So I'm going to make an env-config.jsx. And then I could just paste this in here. And we should now see something. There we go. This is unit block. The course is, yeah. And so that is now verifying that, hey, not only did we make a new slot, we put something in it, and it does something. And that's generally enough to get a PR reviewed. We may ask for a better example than what we've got right there, but that's enough for us to say, okay, cool, you made something and we see it's working. Awesome, this is great. I'm very happy that you have contributed a new way to customize the platform, and we'll be excited to review that PR. So yeah.
Doesn't mean we'll by default accept the slot there, right? Each new slot is a promise we're giving all operators that you can customize that place for some time, and that will give warning when removing that thing later. So it's a responsibility we're taking on. So if, we may not want that particular one, depending on where it is, right?
Yes, but specifically starting the conversation with, I understand what it is that you're trying to add to the platform as a place for people to customize it. Let's discuss if that is something that we want, instead of, okay, wait, where is this adding something? And having it become kind of a scavenger hunt for figuring out what the slot is actually doing. So that's where making the example plugin like this and having a screenshot and showing, hey, cool, this is how you can use this slot. This is what it looks like with this code in there. That makes a huge difference from a, we understand what you're trying to do with this slot perspective. And it makes just reviewing those PRs and talking to anybody that may have opinions on adding that way to customize the platform a lot easier, because especially we'll want to talk to people from a product or UX or design background and say, hey, is this a part of the platform that makes sense to customize in this way? Does this fit with what other people are trying to do here? So being able to have that conversation in a way that is really cross-disciplinary instead of just focused on the code is a big deal when trying to add places for people to customize.
Also, if you're going to submit any kind of customization, do slots, not
Yes.
environment variables, please.
So yeah, that is one example, is just adding that. But we can also do this thing where we're accessing user data. So here's another cool little example. And I'll grab this, and we can talk through it once I paste it in. Watch it reload. Yeah, and here we go. Open edX. Are you sure you want to learn this now? Yes. There we go. Now we can see it. So what that was doing is a couple of cool things. We're using the wrap operator here, and we are wrapping the default contents, which we discussed before. And so then what we are doing is we are just using state for our blurred state, but then we're also getting our authenticated user from app context here. And so that's a nice little thing that we've got coming from front-end platform. Then if it's blurred, we do our blurry stuff. Otherwise, we just return the component. And then here we're actually getting that username, saying, are you sure you want to learn this now? And so that's just a nice little example of what cool stuff you can do with a plugin to kind of show off what a slot might be used for. Even if it gets a little bit more complicated and you're doing some cool examples, it's always nice to have something that's kind of a good use case for a slot as an example when showing this off. And that's something that also can be great in the release notes. And then some slot that you made can be showcased in the release notes as, hey, check out this new slot. Here's an example of how it can be used and a use case that different organizations were looking for. But yeah, we have another example here, but you can, if you're at a point where you've created that slot, you can go ahead and pull in the example mconfig.jsx files. But then we're going to talk about documentation of slots, and we've already hit on a lot of this, but this is just kind of how we have slots documented, and if you are making a new slot, what we would love to see in a PR. First, the slot ID. We want it to follow that reverse DNS naming structure that we were talking about, and that is outlined in this naming ADR. So here we have this plugin, slot, naming, and lifecycle. And here we've got it described with reverse DNS, subdomain, module, identifier, version, and some examples, org, open edX, front end, courseware, navigation sidebar, and then v2. So following that is something that we would be looking for. The list of props, this is definitely something where conversations happen on PRs of, does this need to be a prop? Because when we add something as a plugin prop, that is a promise to anybody using this slot that we are going to provide this information to them going forward. And if we no longer have that in that component upstream, then how are we going to get that into that slot, and how are people going to be able to use it? So that's where a lot of our conversations on these PRs happen.
Maybe we should do an aside on just the props for a bit.
Yeah.
Peter, you can leave. It's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
If you're writing plain old React on a page, right? If you have a component deep in the tree on the same file, right? This component can access a prop from way at the top of the tree in that file, right? Does that make sense? Okay. It's a prop that gets passed down to the top component, but then when you render something in the output, you can still access the same prop from a component deep down, right? So imagine what you're rendering there is all default content, as we just explained, okay? So for the default content, it's easy to reach way up into the tree to pick anything out of the props they want, okay? It's just regular React, nothing fancy. However, let's say deep in that tree, you put in a slot, right? And later on, somebody renders something there. Can that plugin then access the same props? You don't know, and probably no, right? So you need a way to promise that plugin that they can access something there that might be necessary based on where the slot is on the page, what page it is, right? It's a page in the learning MFE, so it's probably sensible to be able to access what course they're in, right? And the way we expose that is via props on the slot definition. Okay, so you specify plugin props there that then get passed down to the top component of your plugin, right? So the top component gets those props, and they get fished out of that context they're in, right? Can you go around it with your plugin? Sure. but we're not promising that that thing you're reaching for is going to be there. Because we want to be able to change that at some point and not have to create a depper ticket and everything, right? When we realize it's important information, or when you realize when you're writing the slot, you should code that information into the props. Okay? Does that make sense?
These props you have, the props you have here are coming from the app context provider, is that?
Yeah,
yeah.
show us where that content, that
So, yeah.
slot is.
Here we've got our course ID, unit, and children. These are coming into our unit content slot component. And then we are taking the course ID and unit ID and putting those in as plugin props. So
Then show
here,
the actual unit content
this
slot.
is where we're using the unit content slot. We're saying course ID is course ID, unit ID is ID. And those are coming up from in here, which is in unit. And then we could work our way up to see where everything's coming from.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But what we just did is promise plugin authors that that information is going to be there for their plugin.
Yes.
Okay.
So here we've got props coming into our render widget, and then props.unitID being used and props.courseID being used. Because you can see that here we go, we've got those. And we could do object deconstruction here too. If we just wanted to have course ID, and then instead of props.courseID, we can just, or I guess this is unit ID here. We want to just do that, that would work. Yeah. But yeah, the idea is that what you get in here, you can get as your plugin props.
So what if, let me ask a question. What if I'm a plugin author, there are slots there, lovely slots, but they don't have the information I want from the LMS, right? They're not in the props. They might be on the page, they might not. Right? What should I do? Thoughts? Some of you I know have already written plugins like that. Maybe not individually, but your organizations. Any ideas? What can you do? What should you do? Say you have the course ID, but you don't have some other information about the course you want to display, some detail. What should you do? What can you do? Sorry. Wait. Catch.
So we in our setup using basically we have few open edX instances, all of them connected to the third-party providers. We took from the providers the unique ID, and this ID looks really ugly. And basically this comes to the user ID on the open edX. Basically we have to modify header in the open edX to fill the correct, basically username. For that purpose, we just patched the frontend platform repository, or I'll just platform. Yeah, there is frontend platform that basically catch the variables from the OpenEDX API.
So you make a request, or
no. This already make a request.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just don't get the needed information. In our case, it's user ID, user name, full name. Basically, we patch this npm package, get this ID, and use it in the header. So basically,
in a slot, or did you fork the header?
We are still in the Redwood. We are now in process of the upgrade to the Sumac.
Okay.
Redwood introduced slots only in the footer, so we can modify footer easily. But with the header, it was kind of pain in us
Yes.
because of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we hope that with these slots we will be able to modify all our parts. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we will. But still, we have kind of patch the front-end platform repository to get this data we need.
Yeah, that's very good feedback, actually. No one should have to modify front-end platform to get the data they need. Right, that's,
With the tutorial, I would say with the tutorial, it's quite easy. First of all, I try to create local npm packages, replace and blah blah blah.
yeah.
But tutorial introduced in some version the patch system where you just install everything, then patch everything.
Yeah.
Inside the npm repository, npm files tree.
Yeah.
So you just patch them in the way you need, and that's all.
Yeah, it's quite clunky.
Yeah.
I know. We're trying to improve that very thing. Right?
Okay, yeah. I hope it
Yeah.
will be soon.
Yeah. Great, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? How do you fetch data that's not immediately available?
No, just
You probably make the API request, preferably with React query that has it cached already.
That's the common. That's the answer I was expecting somebody to give, right?
Yeah, I may or may not have scrolled here for a reason.
Yeah. That's something we're going to show how to do too, right?
Yeah.
So-
I mean, well, here this is hitting just a random dog CEO.
yeah, we're not actually fetching from the
Yeah.
LMS. We're fetching from a third-party service.
Yeah. But yeah, if we go ahead and drop this mconfig.jsx in, oh, we don't have React Query installed. Okay.
Oh yeah, I have to npm install.
Yep. All right.
So the idea preferably with React Query.
Wait.
No, I'm just saying that. The preferably with React Query, it's basically that. It's not installed, it has to be installed. But yeah, we also use the, in one of the customizations we did, we request the organization ID and logo, so it appears in the header of the learning MFE, and we use fetch to get the data and then load it into the header. So basically, yeah, that's the way we do it now.
We use the organization API to get the logo. We parse the URL from we grab the.
Yeah. And if you're fetching anything, you should probably be using React Query.
Yeah.
I'm surprised the learning MFE doesn't have that for anything yet.
Learning MFE is one of our largest MFEs, is also one of our oldest for obvious reasons. And
Yeah, but it's also so big that
Yeah.
I would expect some
Authoring
things to be
does.
using it and some things not. Yeah.
authoring does.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So what's happening here, we're trying to use React Query. It's not installed in Node modules. We're just installing it.
Oh, it's installed now. I fixed that, but now I'm running dev.
Okay. all right.
Yeah. There it is. Oh,
Yeah, we need to set up a provider.
yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so this is probably not the, when? We had this example from a long time ago.
Yeah, I think we're just missing the instructions to set the provider around the,
Yeah.
wherever we're using the, at least around the slot.
Yep. Okay.
That's a great question. How would you set up the provider? You have to put it around the slot?
Okay, so you know how Python lets you import from the future?
Yeah.
I'm importing from the future now. If you come to the 130 workshop,
Okay.
I'm going to tell you that we're going to just have a query provider wrapping everything all the time. So, no, the client and the provider, like they don't initialize, they're not heavy. They don't initialize anything. It's just for the context. So you can use the query client across plugins because, and this is a real problem we've already identified, which is you have two slots here on the page and here on the page, and you need the same information in both. Do you have to fetch it twice? Of course, you don't want to do that. And the way to not do that is React Query, but how do you not fetch it twice if the provider's here and here, right? Yeah, exactly, so.
Okay, here we go. This is in our index.jsx. Let's grab these. It didn't show up in the other place. Oh wait, where's? This is the main index. Yeah, okay. Wrong spot. Yep.
The upside, you're seeing how to debug this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. This is where we want this. Okay. After routes and route. Boom. Okay, cool. This is,
So that's the provider was talking about, right? You want to wrap as much as possible.
okay, and that's just on the routes one. Perfect. And then where is this? That's just moving that.
So, especially if you're coming to the 131, keep note of the things that you don't like of this system, right? It's fine. Keep note of the things you like. Keep note of the things you don't like.
That's right. Yep. Cool. And we've got that. It should be figuring itself out. Sweet. Bonus doggo for this unit. It's trying. Hey, there we go.
But I have a nice ugly dog. Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
It's not ugly.
But yeah, you may run into a position where, especially if you're working pre-front-end base, where we don't have a query client provider, and you want to make sure that React Query works in a slot that you're adding. So adding that as part of the PR and saying, this is important so people can use React Query in their slots is a very reasonable thing to do. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
We have anything left in the?
No, I mean, we've covered everything that we have here. We were talking about documentation.
Yeah.
The description is important. I know we talked about that a bit with just good examples of how to use the slot, why it might be used, where it is on the page, all of that kind of stuff. When making a new slot, it's a good thing. And if you look at the README, here's the unit title slot, and you can kind of see we've got our ID, we've got our aliases. If you're making a completely new one, you don't need the aliases, just use the new naming structure. But if you're modifying something or adding documentation to a slot that doesn't have great documentation, then keeping the aliases around is useful. Then have all the props listed out. So here's all of the plugin props for the unit title slot. And then a quick description used for adding content before or after the unit title. And then here's showing an example mconfig.jsx and saying that we're getting the unit ID and unit title as p elements. There we go. Just quick example. So somebody can paste that into an mconfig.jsx file and see it working. And that's kind of the main goal of these READMEs, is to have example code that people can just grab, paste into an mconfig JSX, and have it work. Not have it be pseudocode, have it be actual code that will work when you paste it, and then you can work from there and create something that you actually want.
Most of the time, the hardest part of creating slots is writing good documentation for it.
Yeah.
Because the slot itself is one line,
Yeah.
maybe a couple lines.
Yeah, and then here we're talking about next steps, and this is publication. This is more about the plugins than it is about the slots. If you're adding slots, the publication is make a PR. But if you're making a plugin, then it can get a little bit more complex. Just as we discussed on the developer side of things, or on the operator side of things, this is a bit outside of the scope of the workshop, so reach out on the forums or on Slack. But what we do have here is a good example of the Aspects plugin, and this is something where it's doing a bunch of stuff. We've got the front-end plugin, and this is being published to NPM. And so not necessarily the best README, but it is being published to NPM. And then we've got all of the stuff that's actually using it in Tutor. So you can see we've got our mconfig JSX here. And this is doing our build time imports, pulling in all the stuff that we need. If we look at, oh, here we go, runtime definitions. Here, it's pulling in all of these things from Aspects and then putting them in. So it's doing a bunch of fancy stuff, and that's a decent example there. We also have a more lightweight example on Tutor MFE. I think it might still be an open PR. Yes.
Basically, what we're showing you is when you're writing more complicated plugins like you asked before,
Yeah.
what can you do to structure the thing so it's not insane? So.
But yeah, so here is an example of something that's more straightforward. Basically, pretend that you are the people that made React Loader Spinner, the library, and then what you want to do is make sure that post npm install, you install the package. So this is just part of your, this is all one Tutor plugin file, right? So we're saying post npm install wherever my component is coming from. And then we want our build time imports to include importing the component that we want from that package. And then here, with our plugin slots or adding items, we're saying, hey, on Learner Dashboard, let's go ahead and hide our default contents. This is something that we need to do with the way Tutor uses plugins as opposed to the standard mconfig JSX stuff, because Tutor does kind of like one big mconfig JSX that's configured in all these different ways. So instead of having a keep default flag to be able to set, you just add a hide operation. But then what we're saying is if we have no courses, insert the no courses fidget spinner, which is just this fidget spinner component that is being imported.
So this is a Tutor plugin.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not a front-end plugin. This is a Tutor plugin that you pip install. And once you pip install and you rebuild the MFE image, it's going to include your front-end plugin in the image. Okay.
Yeah.
This is what this is showing you how to do.
And this, in this example, your front-end plugin is the combination of importing this component from a library and then having this little piece of config that says, hey, in this slot, put this component there. And so if you want something where you're publishing to NPM and then saying use this component in a slot, this should cover all of that. So I'm hoping this lands in the Tutor MFE documentation because it seems like a pretty straightforward and common use case that I would like people to be able to follow. So that way we have a good example for a happy path. But yeah.
This is a PR to the tutor MFE documentation we're trying to land, so it's part of the README.
But yeah, if you look at aspects, you can see that you can go way beyond that when you use the power of tutor plugins to do a bunch of stuff, as well as the power of just writing a lot of code and then publishing it to NPM and being able to pull that in and use it for some really cool things.
Questions?
Yeah.
Criticism? Praise? Anything? Wait.
Yeah, in the tutor example, do we need to hide the defaults every time? Or?
If you don't want to see the defaults,
Okay.
instead of being able to just set the keep default flag to true or false like you can in dev mode with an mconfig JSX, you will need to say hide if you don't want the default content to be there.
Okay.
And that is, yeah.
Import from future again. There's not going to be a keep default. It's just operations.
Oh,
it's
okay.
just going to be, you're going to have to,
Step of operations.
not implicitly, declaratively hide the default content.
Yeah, is there a plan to introduce the unit content slots, or is it just a demonstration?
It's not
You
my
want
PR.
it? You want it? You can copy this.
Would be nice.
Issue the PR. Well, like, so the idea is.
I mean, it's your PR. Go ahead and open it.
Well, it was originally Braden's.
Okay.
Just adapted it. So that's a good question. Let me answer it generally. Okay. So your organization, you're customizing OpenEdX, right? More often than not, you need to fork an MFE. You might even still need to do that after Teak, for whatever reason, right? There's not a slot there. What I advise you to do, wherever you need to change something, create a slot in your fork. Doesn't matter. The reason is you can then submit that slot as a PR. It can land, it might land, it might not. But the best argument for us that slot needs to be there is that you needed that slot to be there. Okay? So if you do that and you describe, this is why I put the slot here. Give us a screenshot or something, right? Okay, yeah, it makes sense, right? People will need to customize here. We'll take the slot, and then for the next release, you don't need to fork that MFE anymore, right? So it's easier for you. In the short term, it's a little harder. You need to issue a PR, get involved, stuff like that. But for the next release, maybe your life will be easy. Next release says your life will be easier. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. So I have one follow-up question. Is there a plan to add React query to the existing MFEs? Because it requires this wrapper, which is pretty hard to come up with.
From
absolutely.
future, yes.
Right. Thanks.
I was surprised to find that it wasn't already there in learning. So, yeah.
Yes.
We, on the back end, we use a similar approach that you are describing. We, edX has created for us a bunch of hooks. Before the hooks, that we were one of the examples that they use to create the hooks framework. And but that is the same approach. They have created before the hooks a similar approach for our own custom code. And currently we are trying to move the older hooks that we have to the new hooks on the back end. But that is I think what I'm trying to do to say is that is the right approach, I think.
Yep.
And, our experience tell that that's the good approach.
Yep, I agree. Thank you. Questions or comments?
About the way you document, I remember talking to Braden last year about eventually transitioning to TypeScript, but I know it's
Great
Well,
question.
It's controversial.
Not anymore, I think.
No.
We're doing our best to transfer.
And I was
anything.
about to ask that. If we don't have TypeScript, do you have like JS docs or something like that that we can read about?
If we don't have TypeScript, we should be updating the thing to use TypeScript. And
Okay.
there is a lot of effort being done to update what we have from using all these old like React prop type stuff
Yeah.
to actually using TypeScript where we can. Braden actually linked a script or tool that automatically
Code mod, a code mod.
that
Yeah.
actually does a lot of that automatically.
Okay.
So
If you have prop types, it'll convert the prop types into TypeScript types.
We have to have it to go through the linter, so I would say
Yeah,
that most of us.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that
Okay.
some PRs will come out from people just having run that, and then we'll get more TypeScript. But yeah, the more TypeScript we have, the better.
Yeah.
If something isn't TypeScript, it's because we haven't made it TypeScript yet. So
So basically, the future is TypeScript.
yes,
Yes, yeah, there's no longer any arguments.
Okay.
It's all moving there. The new version of Frontend Platform is as typed as possible,
Okay.
so that even the configuration of the slots and everything, you can rely on IDE stuff. But you'll see that later if you come.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Going once. Going twice. All right, looks like
yeah. Well,
this one's
thanks
done.
everybody for coming. Hopefully, this was something where you got a good sense of what it takes to use plugin slots, make plugin slots, get a plugin slot PR reviewed. And yeah, definitely I'll be around for any questions that you have, and feel free to come up to me and say hi.
the VMs will be up until the end of today only. So if you have anything in there you want to copy out, do so before, say, I don't know, 9, 10 p.m.